Hey there, my people. I am presenting for your viewing pleasure a pretty good Twilight Zone episode titled The Howling Man. What's so much of a standout here is the whole gothic, shadowy tone of the episode. David Ellington shows up at this monastery castle on a dark and stormy night. He's a lost traveler. There's some scary looking and acting monk guys, eerie background music, and shadowy cinematography throughout that creates this spooky, off-kilter kind of mood. And then there's this constant howling. Well, David investigates the howling and discovers a man locked up in the dungeon, and the guy begs David to set him free. The leader of this monastery group, Brother Jerome, tells David that the locked up guy isn't regular. He's the devil himself. Well, my people, that's the setup. Let's get to it.
I know, it's an incredible story. And you won't believe me, no, not at first. But I'm going to tell you the whole thing. Then you will believe because you must.
David continues the story saying it happened many years ago, after the First World War. I was on a walking trip through Central Europe, and Peeps, this was a thing back in the day. Today, we'd probably say he was hiking through Europe. So one night, David gets caught in this big storm and he ends up being lost. He spots a castle-looking building off in the distance, and he makes his way to it. He bangs on the door as the storm rages around him, begging for someone to hear him and let him in out of the rain. Now, Peeps, look at those doors. Look, y'all know me. Big old wooden doors, and his hand, Peeps, on a big old door knocker. Already you know something scary up in there. Dracula had those big tore-up doors. Frankenstein. And Tales from the Crypt, the Switch. That mad scientist, he had a big old door. Check the playlist, people. Brother man, you need to find a cave to sit in until this storm is over and it's the light of day. I'm just saying. So, Peeps, David is knocking on this door saying, "Help me, let me in." So as he's knocking on the door, a voice calls out, "Yes, what is it?" And the door opens and there's this monk standing there. He's got a lantern and what looks like a shepherd's staff in his hands. David says, "Please let me in, I'm lost." The monk says, "I'm sorry, we don't allow visitors in the hermitage." David says, "I'm not a visitor. I'm a stranger here and I'm lost. You don't understand, I'm lost." The monk seems to think about it and then he turns and David follows him inside. Peeps, look at this place. You can see the size of it as David follows the monk deeper inside. And after a few moments, some other monks show up and David nearly collapses, being held up by the wall. David says, "I'll be all right once I dry out." And the monk tells him to wait here. "I have to speak to Brother Jerome." And so, Peeps, David leans against the wall as if it's the only thing holding him up. Now, folks, here's a stellar camera angle that has you feeling as if you're the one that's tilted. It's called a Dutch angle, and it's used throughout the episode, which is why I recommend you actually view this episode for yourself to get the full effect. A Dutch camera angle is a camera technique where the camera is tilted on its roll axis so the horizon line is no longer level, it's slanted. The point of using this angle is to create and convey a sense of disorientation, unease, tension, or imbalance, and it's used to reflect a character's unstable state or during chaotic or surreal moments. Again, It's used a lot in this episode, but I don't believe it's overdone. I feel it enhances the mood, the tension, the suspense, and personally for me, the scariness of what's going on around David. After a few moments, the monk returns and tells David,
Brother Jerome will see you now. What was that? The wind. Come.
You know what? Number one, that didn't sound like the wind. Number two, it sounded like a howl. And number three, it sounded like it came from inside this place. You know what, peeps? I got one good time to hear that, okay? I know it's a dark and stormy night outside, and y'all know I'm kind of scared of dark, spooky places. But Brother Man gonna stand there and tell me that sound, that eerie sound was the wind. Okay, peeps, if that was me up in that piece, I'd be on full alert right about now. So David follows the monk into a room where there's this other monk, I presume Brother Jerome, sitting behind a desk. Brother Jerome is no nonsense, so he gets right to it, asking David, "Why have you come here?" David says, "My name is Ellington. I'm on a walking trip, but I got lost in the storm." And Peeps, he starts coughing and hacking, and it's from being out in the storm and rain and getting wet like that. David says, "I saw a light here." Brother Jerome asks, "Well, what do you want from us?" And David says, "Shelter and maybe some food." And Brother Jerome cuts right to it, Peeps, and he says, "Look, Brother Man, we can't help you here. You're going to have to book." Okay, I'm paraphrasing. And he says, "Now, Mr. Ellington." And Peeps, Brother Jerome stands up like he ready to throw hands or something. And he said, "You're going to have to leave up out of here right now." And David is standing there looking all shocked. Like, aren't you guys supposed to be peaceful and stuff because y'all monks? And so David turns and he starts walking away. And Peeps, he's kind of stumbling and he reaches out and steadies himself on the door and he's coughing and he takes a few more steps and then he falls out. As he's laying there on the floor, these monks start to gather around him. And Peeps, we hear the voice of Rod Serling.
The prostrate form of Mr. David Ellington, scholar, seeker of truth, and regrettably finder of truth. A man who will shortly arise from his exhaustion to confront a problem that has tormented mankind since the beginning of time.
A man who knocked on a door seeking sanctuary and found instead the outer edges of the Twilight Zone. So after David falls out, they pick him up and put him in one of their chambers to rest. At some point during the night, he wakes up and leaves the room. David is walking around the castle and Peeps, he's still a little bit shaky on his feet when he goes over to a large window area and looks out. Just then he hears the howling sound, and Peeps, you can tell he realizes that it is coming from inside the castle. David turns and he's following the sound, and eventually he comes to a dungeon-like door with one of those monk staffs across it, like it's barring the door or locking it shut. So David approaches the door and
Help me! No, please. In the name of mercy, help me.
Okay, my people, now it's on like Donkey Kong. Dungeon Guy says to David, "You're not one of them." And David says, "No, my name is Ellington. I'm an American." Dungeon Guy shushes him and says, "We only have moments. Come closer, come closer." And then Dungeon Guy says, "They're mad," as in cray-cray. "Mr. Ellington, all of them are raving mad. Listen, I was in the village in Swatchward. I was walking in the streets with my woman. We paused to rest by a tree and we kissed. Is it wrong to kiss? Tell me. David says, well, I don't think so. Dungeon guy says, of course you don't. You don't think so? I don't think so. But Jerome, the lecherous old fool?
I saw him standing close by. Before I could utter a sound, he raised that heavy staff he carries, and he hit me again and again. Because she refused his advances, he took his fury out on me.
You know what, y'all? This sounds like a bunch of hooey to me. And David says, I'm sorry, I find this difficult to believe. And so the dungeon guy says, of course you do, Mr. Ellington. That's the strength of the man. He makes his madness seem a harmless thing. The madness of a religious zealot. This is not a religious order, Mr. Ellington. These so-called brothers of truth, they're outcasts. They're misfits. Cut off from the world because the world won't have them. Mr. Ellington, please, you must believe me. I don't say they're evil. I say they're mad. Cray-cray, y'all. And so David turns to walk away, and the dungeon guy says,
Where are you going?
I'll speak to Jerome.
No! He's the greatest maniac of them all.
Okay. So Dungeon Guy is telling this fantastical story of how Brother Jerome has imprisoned him for kissing a woman that Brother Jerome wanted for himself. And Peeps, Brother Jerome looks like he's 158 years old, but okay. So Brother Jerome walks up on this little scene and he says,
Mr. Ellington, I did not know that you were well enough to walk. Come with me, please.
So they walk into one of the other rooms, and the first thing Brother Jerome says is, brother man, you gonna have to get on up out of here. Okay, you gonna have to book out. And I'm paraphrasing Peeps. And he tells David that we have no facilities to care for the ill, because every now and again David is coughing, and it seems as if he's maybe a little feverish and a little unsteady on his feet. Brother Jerome says arrangements can be made at Schwarzwald, which I guess is the next nearby town. David asks why, and Brother Jerome says, I've already explained that. And David says, no, you've explained nothing. Then David adds, no one asked me to come here. I realize that, but that's no excuse for your behavior. Okay, and you tried to check somebody in their home. Okay. Okay. And so Brother Jerome says, you don't understand. And David says, that's right, I don't. So why don't you tell me? Oh, buddy. You know what? Hands gonna be flying any minute now. And then David says, why are you in such a hurry for me to leave? What are you afraid I'll find out? Is it the man that you got locked up in that cell? That's it, isn't it, brother? Well, you know what? That ain't a secret anymore. Paraphrasing Peeps. I know all about him. You know what, Peeps? I do not understand why folks sit up in your house on your turf, all kind of outnumbered in a strange place, but you gonna sit up and run your mouth to this guy who you already saw a guy in a dungeon. If Brother Jerome is all this nefarious, what makes you think you ain't gonna get hit upside your head with that stick of his and wake up right next to Dungeon Man? Okay, let's continue. David says, look, Brother Jerome, I don't know much about this cult of yours, what's permitted and what isn't permitted, but I seriously doubt if you have the authority to imprison a man against his will. And Peeps, David threatens to go to the police. So it's only after David tells Brother Jerome that he's going to the police that Brother Jerome tells him the real whole truth.
Would you really go to the police?
Would you?
Very well. I've told you the truth, but only a part of it.
And so Brother Jerome tells David to come in and shut the door. As David steps over to Brother Jerome, there's the sound of that howling that's been going on off and on all night, and that everyone was saying was just the wind. David says, "You do hear it." And Brother Jerome says he's heard it every hour of every day for 5 long years. David asks, "Then why did you lie and say it was the wind?" And Brother Jerome says, "I didn't lie. When I told you that no man was howling at the hermitage, I was being perfectly honest. What you saw is not a man."
What you saw is not a man. It is the devil himself.
Jerome says, "What you saw in the cell is Satan, the devil. You asked for the truth, now you have it. Do you believe me?" "You do believe me, don't you?" David says, yeah, of course." Brother Jerome says, "No. Now you're the one who's lying, Mr. Ellington. You don't believe me at all. Quite the contrary, you're now quite certain of what you suspected all along, and that's that I am mad." "Sit down, Mr. Ellington, and we'll see. Let me tell you a story, and we'll see how certain you are that I am mad, how certain you are of anything." Brother Jerome says, "I suppose you fancy yourself a sophisticated man. You consider us to be primitive because we live here in solitude away from the so-called real world. We are misfits. I am not the ignorant fanatic I would appear. Oh, I coped with your world for 40 years and rather successfully at that. The best schools, a degree in philosophy, a job that took me to the ends of the earth. This beard and this staff and this faith are merely the results of a different point of view. If you could understand that, then you can listen to what I have to say with an open mind. 5 years ago, there were no howls in the hermitage. There was simply the bombed-out ruin of an old castle belonging to the family Wolfen. Baron Wolfen gave it to the Brotherhood of Truth as a gesture of charity. Our job was to tend the vineyards and save what souls we could by constant prayer. At that time, shortly after the Great War, the world was in chaos. Everywhere was unhappiness, except in this little village below. For some reason, the people of Schwarzwald refused to yield to despair. They lost none of their faith. They continued as they had for centuries, honest, God-fearing, and happy. This village was a plum to Satan, one he could not resist, so he came here and embarked on a program of corruption. David says, "But you stopped him?" And Brother Jerome says, "Yes. You see, Mr. Ellington, he made the same mistake that you've made. He underestimated me. He thought he would have no difficulty in tempting the old fool, but I had him in a cell before he knew what happened." David asked, "But if he's the devil, how do you keep him locked up?" And Brother Jerome says,
He's the devil. How do you keep him locked up?
With the staff of truth, the one barrier he cannot pass.
In Peeps, I seriously had a 10 Commandments moment with this little scene, and fun fact, the actor who's playing Brother Jerome, that's John Carradine. He played Moses' brother Aaron in the 10 Commandments. So David asks, "Tell me, how did you recognize him? He doesn't look evil." Brother Jerome explains that the devil has power to assume a pleasing shape. I had seen him before in all parts of the world, in all forms and guises. Wherever there was sin, wherever there was strife, wherever there was corruption, persecution, there he was. Sometimes he was only a spectator, a face in a crowd, but always he was there. Now you see, I hope, why you must say nothing of what you've seen and heard here. David says, Brother, it's not that I doubt you understand. Only, isn't it possible you might have made a mistake? No, Brother Jerome says. Think, Mr. Ellington. Think of the peace of the world these last 5 years. Think of this country now. Is there any other like it? David says, but you haven't put an end to suffering. There's still people offing one another and robberies. Even now while we're talking, people somewhere are starving. Brother Jerome says, the suffering man was meant to endure. We cause most of our own grief. We need no help from him. It's the unnatural catastrophes, the great war, the overwhelming pestilence, the wholesale sinning that we've stopped. David says, I believe you, brother. I admit I was doubtful at first, but you've convinced me absolutely. Okay, Peeps, that don't even sound right. I promise to keep your secret. Yeah, okay. Brother Jerome says, good. Tomorrow, if you're feeling well enough, you may leave. In the meantime, Brother Christopher will look after you. Please go directly to his room. And instead of going directly to Brother Christopher's room, David does this.
He lied to you, didn't he?
He said you were the devil.
What a dream for an old devil. To catch the devil and lock him up. You don't believe him, do you?
No, of course not.
So, while he's talking to Dungeon Guy, Brother Christopher shows up and says, Brother Jerome thought you might lose your way, so he sent me. And they both turn and head towards the room. Once inside, Brother Christopher locks the door, and David asks why, and Brother Christopher tells him it's for his protection, and he should get some rest because he's still sort of sick. Needless to say, Brother Christopher falls asleep, and David takes the key, lets himself out of the room, and he goes over to the cell.
You've come.
What do you want me to do?
Lift off the wooden bolt.
Is this all that holds you in?
Yes.
Well, why haven't you done it yourself?
Please, there's no time for talk.
We need a whole bunch of time to talk. So, Peeps, let me get this straight. Brother Jerome already told you the Dungeon Guy is being held by the Staff of Truth. Dungeon Guy has been telling David that Brother Jerome is the bad guy, and he's mad cray-cray. Yet even though he can reach out the cell, because we saw him reach out that cell and touch David's shoulder earlier, he should be able to bend his arm downward and lift that staff up himself. He don't have to really lift it up. He only needs to lift it up enough to toss it to the side. Because Brother Man does look like he's a little bit on the buff side. Yet, he don't even want to touch it. And when David starts to question him, something he has spent all this long time really failing to do with this guy, he says,
Mr. Ellington, in the name of mercy, if you fail now, they'll kill both of us. Don't you understand that?
So when it seems like logic and reasoning with David doesn't seem to be working as quickly as he'd like, Dungeon Guy uses self-preservation. He's made Brother Jerome and the merry band of monks a threat to David. David's life is as much at stake as his own. If David doesn't do something soon, the both of them are hit. It almost would appear that David has to save Dungeon Man's life in order to save his own.
Hurry! Hurry!
Stop! Stop! Put this on, the storm.
The devil stands there a moment, and it's as if his face changes ever so subtly. You can see it, Peeps. Look at how his face subtly morphs from that regular dungeon guy to somebody or something more evil. And David is standing there with his back turned, and the devil reaches out his hand, and David's body starts to convulse and contort, and he drops to the floor like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Then the devil, freed once more, leave to walk the wide world. And David lays there like the stoop he is and watches the result of his arrogance and stupidity being unleashed onto the world. Once the devil disappears, his hold on David is gone and he sort of flops on the floor. Brother Jerome and Christopher, they rush up to see the dungeon cell door open and it's empty. Brother Christopher walks off while Brother Jerome puts his arm around Boo Boo the Fool here and says,
I'm sorry for you, my son. All your life you will remember this night. And you'll know, Mr. Ellington, whom you have turned loose upon the world.
Peeps, as far as I'm concerned, the episode could have ended here for me, but it didn't. David says, in that moment, I decided to spend the rest of my life tracking him down, to recapture the evil I'd released, the evil that soon took the shape of the Second World War, the Korean War, the hideous new weapons of war. I swore I'd find him again, as Brother Jerome had done. It took many years, but I did it.
See, I have him in there now. You understand now. You understand why you must not, under any circumstances, go near that door. You see how important it is that he stay locked up.
So, Peeps, we see that this whole time David was recounting this story to his housekeeper. He tells her that he's sending him back to Brother Jerome. He tells the housekeeper that he'll do a bit of howling, but pay no attention to that. It's a trick. He tells her that he has preparations to make to get the closet guy back to Brother Jerome, and he'll be back in a few minutes. Remember, keep the door locked. Really, Peeps? And this from the guy who couldn't keep the cell door locked. But this old lady housekeeper, she's just gonna follow your orders to the T. Well, let's see what happens.
Ancient folks saying, you can catch the devil, but you can't hold him long. Ask Brother Jerome, ask David Ellington. They know, and they'll go on knowing to the end of their days.
Well, there you have it, my people. The Twilight Zone episode titled The Howling Man. Peeps, I love this episode. It was dark, gothic, gritty, slightly off kilter with the camera angles, and full of stellar acting. I straight up loved John Carradine as Brother Jerome. He made me believe him in that role, and that voice of his, it was just a great fit. Also a great fit were H.M. Wynett, who played David Ellington, and Robin Hughes, who played the Howling Man. Peeps, I feel the special effects were really good for 1960. How they aged David with the younger David at the beginning of the episode and the older David at the end, and how they changed the Howling Man's face without us seeing a cut. It's like it just morphed into the devil's face. And of course, my favorite special effect has him full on changing into that scary devil as he's walking past the pillars to that window. Fun fact regarding that particular special effect, they made him up and he walked past all the pillars. Then they added to the makeup and he walked past all the pillars again. And then they added to the makeup and he walked past all the pillars and again and again. Then all they did was to cut and edit to where it appears that as he's passing the pillars, he's changed. That's some cool special effects for 1960, and I feel it was super effective. Well, my people, I hope you enjoyed the episode. To all my subs, y'all a jam as always, and to my viewers, I so appreciate you as well. Peeps, show some kindness out there, and remember to be kind to yourselves. Until next time.